We're going to go ahead and start. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Commission on Common Ownership Communities dealing with mortgages and HOAs during COVID-19 and your assessment issues. My name is Mark Fine. I am the chairman of the commission. We have several commissioners in the audience. We also, I want to give a shout out to Mr. Eisenhower, the chairman of Leisure World. Nice to see you there, sir. Phil Giza is going to be on the panel, and I'd like to turn it over to Sarah Frush. She is the executive vice president. She's executive officer, I'm sorry, of civil justice in Baltimore. She's been working with us. Our task force has been going together now, what, about 3 weeks, 4 weeks?
Yeah, about that, or a month, yeah.
Yeah, about a month, working on issues regarding distressed community and what we can do to get things ready in the event we have some more issues. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. So Sarah, I turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks for having us and hosting us. My name's Sarah Coffey Fresh. I'm the executive director at Civil Justice. And I'm going to introduce our panel. I just did some math, and combined between myself, Alexa, Philip, and Carrie, we bring about 50 years of experience with civil legal matters, including foreclosure. So I, Alexa, and Philip are attorneys, and then Carrie has a very strong background in helping homeowners with foreclosure issues. I will start with Philip Robinson. Philip is a former executive director of Civil Justice. He is now at the Consumer Law Center, which is a consumer litigation firm representing consumers in state and federal courts throughout Maryland. And he has more than 12 years of experience advocating for the rights of Maryland residents. He is the firm's principal attorney. And as I said, he's the former executive director of Civil Justice. While he was at Civil Justice, Philip served as the organization's second director and co-led the Maryland Foreclosure Prevention Pro Bono Project. And in that capacity, he trained over 2,000 Maryland attorneys who volunteered to help homeowners facing foreclosure. So Philip brings a lot of experience and is very well poised to bring his expertise both to this panel and to the upcoming issues we have facing us with the COVID-19 crisis. Next, I will introduce Alexa Bertinelli. Alexa is Civil Justice's senior staff attorney. And in that capacity, she represents homeowners around the state. She has been recently involved in litigation involving practices by common ownership communities and collection practices. She is a graduate of the University of Texas School of Law. She graduated in 2011, and she holds her BA from the University of Arizona in 2006. She was licensed in 2011, and again, she is Civil Justice's senior staff attorney. And during this presentation, she'll be speaking mainly about common ownership communities and how you can handle situations should you become delinquent on your payments. Last but certainly not least is Civil Justice's Deputy Director, Carrie McCulley. Carrie oversees Civil Justice's day-to-day operations as well as our referral network. She is a longtime dedicated advocate for the working poor in Maryland, and she was instrumental in creating the Foreclosure Brief Legal Advice Project, which has helped hundreds of homeowners obtain timely and affordable legal advice from foreclosure defense attorneys. In the past weeks, Carrie has been very busy getting up to date on the CARES Act and some of those matters that we'll discuss tonight. So with that, I will turn it over to Carrie and we'll get started.
Thanks, Sarah.
Before we go there,
so thank you so much and welcome everyone tonight.
Can I give some?
I'm sorry, is there somebody else speaking?
Yeah, that was me. I just want to give some guidance to the audience. Mark, has that been done yet?
Great.
We're going to do it after the presentation.
Okay, sure.
Okay, go ahead, Sarah. I'm sorry, Carrie. Carrie, go ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. I hope you get some really great information from our presentation. This is an ongoing, evolving situation. There are so many moving parts and so many questions that people will have. But this is to really focus on related to foreclosures and homeowners associations and such, but primarily it is just what to worry about now, what to deal with now. Like I said, it's an ongoing situation, but this is just to really what to focus on to begin with. So to start with, we'll say, what is a foreclosure? And a foreclosure is the legal process where property is sold to pay a debt, a secured debt that has gone into default, i.e. payments have not been made and therefore has gone into default. Next slide, please. So defaulting on a mortgage is an inability to make the full mortgage payment by the due date. Now, generally speaking, most people, their mortgage is due on the first of the month. However, for some people that may not be true. It really depends on what your loan documents say when you took out the mortgage. One point of clarification is a lot of people think that they automatically have a built-in grace period. For example, your mortgage company may say, it's due on the 1st, yet, we'll give you to the 5th. Technically speaking, that mortgage is late if you do not make that mortgage payment by the 1st of the month. They might not report you as late if you make it on the 2nd or 3rd, but technically speaking, you are late if you go past the due date. Next slide, please. So what are you going to do if you, back one, please. Oh, right there, that would be great, thank you. So what should you do if you can't make your mortgage payment? Obviously, this is very relevant as to right now. A lot of people have been affected by the coronavirus with the shutdown. Jobs, people are being laid off. People, we're in a holding pattern with a lot of people. People's income you're being adversely affected. So what do you do if you can't make your mortgage payment? What you need to do first and foremost is you need to call your mortgage company. That sounds pretty basic. However, it's very important that that be done. Reach out to the mortgage company. And that can be difficult. A lot of people are trying to reach out to their mortgage company right now, as well as their customer service centers for many of the mortgage companies. They're in the same boat in the fact that they're also working remotely or working from home. So the hold times are longer, their phone lines are jammed. But you do need to make contact with them. What you also need to do is when you do speak with someone from your mortgage company, you need to request the forbearance. So a forbearance is a temporary suspension of a borrower's duty to make a mortgage payment. So what that does is basically you're saying, I have been adversely affected by the coronavirus or by COVID-19, my income has been, and I cannot make my mortgage payment, and I'm requesting a forbearance agreement. Anytime you do reach out to your mortgage company, start keeping detailed notes. What we learned in the last foreclosure crisis back in 2008, 2009 is the servicers aren't great about dealing with a massive influx of people reaching out for help. We're hoping that some of the practices and service and things that they learned in the last crisis will transpose over to this one, but I don't know about that. So as a guy, we say, keep a note, keep a detailed log of all your communications with the mortgage company, who you spoke with, when, if they have a badge or ID number. It can be really very helpful as it goes on, because this can be a very difficult and frustrating experience in dealing with your mortgage company. I'm not trying to give them a bad rap or anything. I'm just trying to be very open and honest that communicating with them at times can be very challenging. So keeping detailed notes really will be very helpful. So another task that you want to deal with or want to tackle when you first realize you can't make a mortgage payment is you do want to do a little bit of research as to who owns your mortgage. And the reason you want to do that is because that will determine that will determine what options are available to you. Can we go to the next slide, please? You'll hear a lot about the CARES Act, and the CARES Act was put in place by Congress, and it's to provide temporary foreclosure relief to borrowers with federally backed mortgages. That's why it's so important to understand who actually owns your mortgage. Now, about 1/3 of all mortgages out there are currently owned by a government backed or a federally backed mortgage. So that's Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, VA, USDA. Obviously, that's not all mortgages. Many of the servicers, if not all of the servicers, Philip could correct me if I'm wrong, have agreed to follow a little bit of the CARES Act, and the fact that they're not, they'll grant a forbearance. But first and foremost, this is directly applying to those federally backed mortgages. That's what the CARES Act states. If you have a privately owned or securitized mortgage, all of these options may not be available to you. So that's why it's very important to research that. So for those of you who are dealing with a federally backed mortgage, the Fannie, the Freddie, the FHA, et cetera, all you do need to do is contact the mortgage company and state that you have a financial hardship due to the COVID outbreak and you can't make your mortgage payment and you're requesting a forbearance agreement. That's it. That's all you need to do to start that process if you can't make your mortgage payment. The foreclosure companies, the mortgage companies are accepting that as fine. They're accepting that as enough. You don't have to provide written documentation to prove a hardship. At this time, just a verbal affirmation is enough. The nice thing with this CARES Act, in addition to the forbearance, is that even if a borrower is already in default as of the time of the national emergency declaration, which I believe was March 15th, but it was back in March, it applies to them as well. So you can have anyone at any point in the foreclosure process, and they can also request this forbearance agreement. Or forbearance. The forbearance will last up to 180 days and can be extended for an additional 180 days. Okay, next slide. So once the forbearance has happened and stuff, that, there's I'm going to provide a little bit of additional information about what some of the options may be. I'm not going to go super deep and detailed into them because this is much further down the road. If you're, experience a financial hardship due to the coronavirus, this is what you need to do right now. Sorry if you hear my dog. This is what you need to do right now. And then you also need to gather information. But this is just to give you a brief overview of what some of these options are. So, if you can't make the mortgage payment, you do the forbearance, what happens afterwards and such? Well, you're going to apply for loss mitigation options. So it breaks down into two different types. You have retention options and transition options. Retention options meaning you're trying to find a solution where you can keep the house or stay in the house. Those include the forbearance. They include a reinstatement, a repayment plan, a modification of the loan, partial claim, which is prevalent with FHA mortgages. And then also when you declare bankruptcy, certain types of bankruptcy, that can also help you keep the house. Transition options would be options such as a regular sale or a short sale. A short sale would be when the mortgage is for more than the property is currently valued at. So the mortgage company does need to agree to that in advance. But you're selling the property for less than it's worth. And then the other options are a deed in lieu. You can do sale through a bankruptcy, and then of course, a completion of an actual foreclosure. Next slide. So what happens when the forbearance ends? And this is why this is just so very important. It really will depend on who owns the mortgage. If it's federally backed, some of these options will be covered under the CARES Act. If it is not, it really depends on who the investors or insurers guidelines are. So you may be looking at options such as once the forbearance plan ends and you're starting to make some money, you might be able to do some form of repayment plan, tacking it onto the back of the mortgage, or you maybe have other options available such as a loan modification. But it truly will depend on who that investor or insurer is. I don't believe there's been official guidance given about what those options are going to be like yet. So, but this is a situation that is developing and fluid at all times. Next slide, please. So this is a brief slide about what the overall foreclosure process looks like. Now, again, there is a foreclosure moratorium on, they're not filing new foreclosure actions. Even if you haven't requested a forbearance agreement, if you have a federally backed mortgage, please make sure you request that. Even though there's this moratorium that is on, you really want to make sure that you're requesting it because it really isn't as detrimental to your credit potentially. And then also some additional fees and things aren't going to be accruing against the property if you're requesting the forbearance versus just going into default. So what is the overall foreclosure process? Now, it is a longer process. It's not something that happens overnight or very quickly. Back in 2008, 2009, a bunch of consumer advocates and attorneys and everyone really worked very hard with the state of Maryland to extend the foreclosure process. The way it was before, it hadn't been changed for 250 years. So what they did was they took a process that was only about 90 days long and they've extended it over several months. So this is the basic listing of what happens. First, you go into default on the mortgage. And again, there is currently a foreclosure moratorium on, so even if you've defaulted, you're not facing all of this just yet. But so what happens is the default on the mortgage, and the first thing you'll get is something called a notice of intent to foreclose, and it says it in big letters across the top of the letter, notice of intent to foreclose. And it's just letting you know that you haven't made a mortgage payment and the bank is going to consider beginning the foreclosure process against you. And this is that first step. And please pay attention and reach out for help. The next step that can happen after the notice of intent to foreclose is the order to docket. And that's a bunch of papers and affidavits and such that get filed with the circuit court in your county. Obviously, this case would be Montgomery County, it's where the property is. The order to docket is filed with one of all the papers. It's one of two papers that are very, very important. It's either called a preliminary loss mitigation affidavit or a final loss mitigation affidavit. And the reason those papers are important is that really helps give some information to you as to what what the mortgage company will consider. Preliminary loss mitigation affidavit means basically that they're still either considering you for options, or they haven't spoken with you yet about what potential options are, or you haven't reached out. But either way, nothing's final yet. It's still preliminary. The final loss mitigation affidavit means the mortgage company has, determined that either you don't qualify or you haven't reached out for assistance, but either way, they're moving forward with the action. Now, the order to docket can be filed with the prelim or the final. If it is filed with the preliminary loss mitigation affidavit, the soonest that they can take that next step and file the final is, I believe, 28 days. Yes, 28 days. So once you receive a final loss mitigation affidavit, that's your opportunity to request foreclosure mediation, which adds additional days to that timeline. Foreclosure mediation is a face-to-face meeting with representatives, the foreclosure attorneys representing the mortgage company, as well as a neutral third party, an administrative law judge, who acts as a mediator, try to facilitate or work something out between you and the mortgage company. Representatives from the mortgage company also do have to be there, or they don't have to be there in person, but they will be there via phone. And it's an opportunity to try to do some sort of action to avoid a foreclosure. If no resolution is made at the mediation, the next step is the property could go to a foreclosure sale, or after that, there's a report of sale, a ratification of sale, a motion for possession, and then there's the eviction process. Now, after the foreclosure mediation, before the sale, the mortgage company does need to advertise the property. So, you are adding time to this whole timeline, and it doesn't happen overnight. For the other thing to really keep in mind with this whole process is it takes time. If you go into default, no one's coming to evict you from the property within 60 to 90 to 120 days. They do have to do all of these steps before it can come to that. Now, that being said, you don't ever want to wait till the last minute. Each time you go to another one of these steps, the process is getting more and more serious, and it can be more difficult to work out something to avoid foreclosure. And it's really key to make sure that you're reaching out for help as early as possible today. If you know you're having issues, your income has been adversely affected by everything that is going on, this is the time to reach out for help. You want to reach out to work with some housing counseling agencies in addition to the mortgage company. The mortgage company is concerned about their bottom line. They're not always looking out for you. That's why it's always a great option to reach out for housing counselors who are a nonprofit, various nonprofit organizations. And we have a resource slide that has a website where you can find a list of housing counselors. It's a wonderful, wonderful service. They're trained and certified by HUD, and they don't charge any fees. This is not the type of thing where you want to, you're getting what you pay for. Take advantage of these services if you qualify. There's a great group of people that really understand exactly how mortgages work, how the foreclosure process works, what it's like to deal with some of these mortgage servicers, what the paperwork means, because it can be very, very confusing. And they're just really an excellent resource that's out there to help you. They even know when it's appropriate to escalate to legal help if it gets that far. So it's just a wonderful, wonderful resource. We can't stress it enough. And then most importantly, they can also really help you avoid scams, because with hard times, it seems like there's a lot of scammers that are out there to take advantage, and that happens so frequently. and it's heartbreaking to see that. So really reach out for qualified assistance. And if you use those housing counselors on that future slide, you'll be able to say, it'll be very helpful. Next slide. Okay, that's it for my part.
So my name, oh.
Oh, thank you, Carrie. I was just going to say we're going to transition a little bit here to talking about issues that you may be seeing if you're a member of a common ownership community. Alexa is going to discuss some issues that you may be seeing and how to handle things if you're falling behind on your common ownership community fees. So, Alexa?
Yeah, and I just want to clarify, I'm going to be focusing on homeowners associations and condo associations. Common ownership communities also, I think, include housing cooperatives, but that's not really the focus of my brief discussion today. And so to start off, I thought it would be important to go over kind of the important players that are involved in a common ownership community. There's the developer who initially created the community. They're the unit owners. Those are the people who own the individual, condominiums or houses that are part of the community. The associations are managed by a board of unit owners. Some, though not all, common ownership communities also hire a management company to manage the running of the association. And a lot of them also hire collection attorneys and will refer cases or refer unit owners at a certain point if they're delinquent in their dues. How do you know whether, what a common ownership community can and cannot do? This is going to be decided by a number of different laws and documents that govern what these associations can and cannot do. First, associations are governed by federal fair housing laws. I see this come up a lot with especially people with disabilities who might need accommodations or changes to the rules and procedures of the association in order to better have use of their home in the association. Condo and homeowners associations are also mostly governed by state law. Certain local jurisdictions may have some additional requirements. For example, some jurisdictions like Montgomery County, Prince George's County require associations to be registered. And then where you're going to really find out more about kind of what you can do on a kind of day-to-day basis and what condo associations can charge is going to be found in the declarations, the bylaws, and the rules and regulations. And those are in order of priority. So the declarations are at the very top, and those are generally recorded in land records and are the hardest to change. Then there's the bylaws, and then most associations also have some rules and regulations. Next slide. So what can happen if you fall behind on your association dues? Possibly there might be a suspension of your privileges, parking privileges, but it depends. For condo associations, that has to be something that's in the declarations. It's not something that can be permitted by the bylaws or rules and regulations. And so a lot of times I've seen associations suspend those privileges even though they don't have the right to do so. Another thing that can happen is that additional charges may be added. That includes things like late fees, interest, and collection costs, including attorney's fees. And unfortunately, those can add a lot to the assessments that are due. The account might be sent to an attorney's office for collection. Different associations have different practices about when they do this. Not every association uses a collection attorney to assist in collecting their debt, but many of them do. Associations can also file a lien, record a lien on the property. There is a procedure that they have to follow in order to do so, including giving you notice before filing the lien. And you do have the right to dispute that lien before it's filed if that's something you want to do. The problem is that you have to go to the circuit court and file a case in order to dispute the lien, and that can be challenging to do. So if you get a notice that your association is filing a lien on your property and dispute how much they're saying that you owe, you may want to consult with an attorney about your options. This lien can be foreclosed on. I think it's important to know that, this isn't a mortgage, but your association can foreclose on this lien, just like mortgage company can foreclose on a mortgage. And in order to foreclose on that lien, the association would have to go through that whole process that Carrie went through, just like with a mortgage foreclosure. Another thing that can happen is that an association might file a lawsuit. For the most part, these cases are often filed in the district court. And there is a procedure. You would receive notice and an opportunity to appear before a judge to dispute it. At this point, the court is not hearing these cases, and I don't think we'll begin hearing them until, I think, August at the beginning. But there's been generally a stay on collection lawsuits at this point, but they will be coming, unfortunately. If an association gets a judgment against you, there's different things that the association can do to collect. That includes garnishing wages, garnishing bank accounts or other assets. There's a process by which the association can also get a lien through this collection lawsuit. And then the association can also conduct a sheriff's sale on the property. And this sheriff's sale is different from the foreclosure process. It's a lot faster, and there are fewer protections available and to stop that sheriff's sale. Next slide. So what should you do if you can't pay your dues? So first, you want to try to do everything you can to increase your income or reduce your expenses. And so, look at ways to reduce your property taxes. If this is available for anyone, whether or not you've fallen behind, but the homestead exemption, if this is your primary residence, you definitely want to apply for that with the Department of State Assessments and Taxation. If you're lower income, I think below $60,000 for a household, you may want to also look into whether or not you are eligible for a homeowner's property tax credit as a way to reduce your property taxes. If you've recently lost your job, look at unemployment benefits, food stamps, and then many counties also offer utility assistance, and so you want to look at other options for bringing in some additional income. You may want to also look at whether or not you are eligible for a mortgage forbearance. If you're not able to pay both your mortgage and your dues, it may be a good idea for you to get a forbearance on your mortgage so that you have the income to pay your assessments. Another thing you should do is reach out to the board or the property manager to see if you can work out any arrangements. And then you may want to also consult with an attorney. Bankruptcy may be an option, but I would highly recommend consulting with an attorney before filing bankruptcy. I've had a lot of clients file Chapter 7 bankruptcies on their own, and it just not accomplished what they were hoping to accomplish. So consult with an attorney because it's a little bit more complicated when you're dealing with your home and your property. And you may have other legal options to pursue besides bankruptcy, especially if you're disputing how much the association says that you owe. Next slide. And then these are resources that are available. This is our intake for civil justice. We have intake Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., but please feel free to call outside of those hours and leave a message. We'll call you back. We also have a foreclosure brief legal advice helpline, which is staffed by foreclosure attorneys. And we have the number here. It's available Monday afternoons and Wednesday mornings. Next slide. And so this is our contact information if you have questions. Please feel free to give us a call, both for Carrie and I and Philip, as well as the Commission on Common Ownership Communities.
Thank you, Carrie and Alexa. We have a good long while for questions. So, and you've got some real experts here. So I'd encourage folks to, as possible, put questions in the Q&A box, and we will hopefully be able to get to them. But Phil Giza, I didn't want to step on your toes for the rules for questions and answers.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say he's going to explain that to you.
Okay.
Okay. We just want to tell everybody out there, in case they've been trying to chat too, there's no chat. There is Q&A that you can type in right now. Sarah has a few questions, I think. You do have, Sarah, right? After I finish. So the Q&As are empty right now that are on live. You can type in right now if you want. That's great. Sarah will, in a few minutes, will talk about things. He oversees up to 15 commissioners, county staff for the CCC under the county. And what these experts here have just described is Mark is over 1,200 homeowner associations, condo associations. That's about 5,000 homeowner and condo association board members. It's about 142,000 residential units. And it includes in those units about 340,000 residents. So it's quite a few people that are out there, and we assume that a lot of people are affected by this. So we really appreciate this group right now. Sarah, do you want to go through some of the questions that were sent to you?
Sure.
Or do you have those? Okay, great. Thank you.
No problem. I think that the first question I would like to start with just came in actually, and I think it's a great place to jump off, and that is, Carrie, where do folks go if they want to speak with a housing counselor? Where should they start?
Is she fine? Oh,
She's muted.
yeah. Carrie, you should see a message and unmute. There you go.
Sorry.
Back.
There's something crawling around in my attic above me. So I apologize. So
Poltergeist.
I had it muted because there's a little chaos going on in the background.
An A&E movie.
Yeah. You really never know what's going to happen. I think if we can try to go back 2 slides, there may have been a resource page. One more.
Oh.
There we go. The very first website that's listed, the Maryland Hope website, it's right there. You can also Google Maryland Hope or mdhope.gov. That will bring it up. You'll have to click on from there, but here's the whole website, and it's a fantastic resource of counseling, Maryland housing counseling agencies. They're HUD certified, and the ones on this list also receive funding from the state of Maryland, from the Department of Housing and Community Development. Many of these organizations with Civil Justice has been working with since the last crisis. So it's a wonderful resource. There's other resources listed here just for information purposes, as well as I was stressing about people looking up their mortgages to find out who owns them, a Fannie Mae loan lookup, a Freddie Mac loan lookup, et cetera, et cetera.
If I could add also, Sarah and Carrie, we are videoing the webinar. It will be posted on the site. It'll be emailed to everybody in attendance, and the PowerPoint presentation will be loaded on the website also.
Great. So everyone would then be able to go back and easily access these links.
Correct.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Great. I think the next question I will put to both Alexa as well as Philip. And maybe Philip, you can take the lead here since you haven't been able to weigh in yet. There's kind of this outstanding question, since we're talking about both common ownership communities as well as folks who are behind on their mortgage. Like, what if you're behind on both? What do you do? What do you pay first? What do you pay last? And we can kick that to Philip first.
Okay, so I'll give a little context to this in my answer, a little hit list lesson from history. So we know from 2008 to 2010 that there was, you know, a downturn caused primarily by sort of screwy mortgage practices. And we know, and I know from my experience, that most mortgage companies were instructing their borrowers not to make their payments to their common ownership communities. And there was a lot of screw ups for borrowers trying to get loan modifications and get relief that they were entitled to under the various emergency legislation that Congress passed back then. So, you know, I think it's an individualized question depending on your circumstances, but generally, my advice to my clients has always been, those clients who live in a common ownership community, is to try to do their best to stay current on the HOA or condo fees, because it's just very difficult to unwind those and to get relief from those. And then, so I think like Civil Justice has the hotline that someone can call and get free advice and go through their particular situation. And so take advantage of that if someone's in this situation. The other flip side I want to sort of share is I think there's an opportunity, and Mark, I'm glad that you've organizing this for tonight. There's an opportunity for common ownership communities to do it differently than what would happen before. We have a real problem in that getting the information out to borrowers to know their rights with their mortgages, and the common ownership communities can get that information to their members who may be in trouble. And it's in the community's interest to do that, because if we can get the mortgage situation resolved and avoid the foreclosure and keep the condominium fees being paid, that should be the priority. So I think at a very fundamental sort of grassroots level, the community should be doing much different than what occurred before, in trying to get to their members, their residents, information on how to fix the mortgage issues so it doesn't snowball into a problem for the community. And so doing like the workshop that we're doing tonight, even on a more grassroots level, I think would be really important. And your blast newsletters, let them know about these resources that Carrie shared, free housing counselors, and free hotline to get questions. I really think it's important to do that.
Could I add one thing in there?
Sure.
We will be presenting to council, if we can get it done in time, on the 7th, if not July the 14th, we will be presenting a bill to the council for a package for the associations to avail themselves of if they have issues where, because of the members not paying their dues because of inability, we will assist. The management companies were sent out a document today asking for some information about delinquency. It isn't a survey. It's to back up what we're about to do with council, and it's a several $1 million bailout. So when the boards get that thing, don't do the, hey, don't fill this out because it's just garbage that they want to get to find out what's going on. We need it to back up the bill. And the bill is slated to hit July the 7th and at latest July the 14th. And it's a bailout to the associations in the event we have people who cannot pay their bills. So it's to your advantage to do what you need to do. Thanks. Go for it.
Alexa, did you want to add anything on to what either Philip or Mark said in relation to this question?
No, I am in agreement with what both said, and I also think that it's very important to pay the association assessments. I have had a lot of clients prioritize their mortgage over paying the assessments and then end up in some pretty tricky situations. The amount of fees and collection and interest that get added just make it very hard to get caught up once you fall behind. And I think if you have some options with your mortgage, especially with potentially acquiring a forbearance, you should really look into that.
Let me just build off of that a little bit more. Of my main point is the associations can look back historically to see how much money they spent on collections. And what I'm suggesting is that a lot of that money might not ever have been recouped. But if the associations take a proactive approach now, early on, in trying to help their members who may be in trouble, so that those members can pay the association fees and get help on their mortgages, you might not incur the expenses that Mark thinks is going to come and probably will come, but at least we can lessen them. That's the point I'm really trying to raise. There's no reason to be spending a bunch of money on collections if we can find another way.
Right. And we also have a hardship agreement on the website for the homeowner and also for the association. It's fill in the blank PDF that you present at your meeting so that you will work with the homeowner on it so that we can make this thing streamlined.
So we have kind of a couple of questions in the same vein that came in. One is really, what can HOAs do to aid homeowners who can't pay their assessments? And so we've talked a little bit about the collection costs and you know, how those can run away. Do you have other ideas of other, you know, the question here is specific to waiving late fees, other ways that HOAs could assist homeowners who are falling behind?
So, you know, the housing counselor, the best housing counseling agency, one of the best in the state that I recommend all my clients go to, is based in Montgomery County. So when Mark, the affidavit that Mark talked about, the hardship affidavit, is presented by a member to the HOA board or the community board, the board can say, we have these resources that are available. And you can just hand them that information and encourage them to get help. I mean, philosophically, a lot of people in 2008 were opposed to telling their neighbors or their friends or their family that they were in trouble on their mortgage. By the time we got to 2012, nobody cared about that problem anymore, and people were pretty open about it. And so I would just, you know, the old school is, I'm not going to tell someone else my financial troubles, but really it's sort of a community thing. And I think you could be helping to get those resources. Somebody who might be equity rich in their property values haven't dropped. It's a seller's market right now. You know, they may need to look at other potential options. Maybe if they live at Leisure World, you know, they might have an opportunity, depending on the qualifications in the association, of getting a reverse mortgage if they have a fair amount of equity to resolving their situation. So, you know, I think using the free resources, and to the extent the associations can get those free resources to qualified, non-scam entities, then, you know, that's what they can be doing. Information is power. That's my main message there.
I think that's a good point, Philip, because we don't want in each homeowner association and condo association for people to have to foreclose. So by waiving the fees possibly, or just we're deferring the payments on the homeowner association fees, hopefully we're plugging, you know, the hole in the rowboat a little bit here and helping them. And I think it's a good point too, that people have to be honest. They should be honest with their homeowner association and not hide these things. And the homeowner association boards have to come back also and say, and reach out and say, what can we do? Because nobody wants a foreclosure in their immediate area.
It just hasn't, there was this study done in 2008 by the Federal Reserve that said a single foreclosure drops property values by $10,000. So it doesn't really help, and especially in a common ownership community, it doesn't help. Conversely, I think doing aggressive collections litigation or activities, somebody who's struggling may not be in the association's interest. And so that's why I'm just saying, look at it a different way.
It's excellent.
So a question came in along those lines, which is if someone hasn't paid their condo fee for a long time, why is it so hard to make anything happen? It seems as though we are paying the collection attorneys a lot of money, but the unit owner keeps getting to stay in their home. I mean, that may be a very fact-specific situation, but it kind of brings together, as I'm reading it, it brings together these issues of aggressive collection costs versus waiving fees versus putting the property into foreclosure.
One thing I can comment, Sarah, Mark has me and some other people going out to homeowner associations sometimes to mentor them, and one of the things that we're seeing and that I'm going to be putting into more of a list of what should be done. Homeowner associations should regularly at meetings be bringing up the collection issues, not naming the unit, not naming the person, but that should be a regular part of the monthly meetings or quarterly meetings so that the homeowners know where things stand. Also, if a collection agency is not doing due diligence, it may be time for them to look at other avenues. I'll just put that out there.
Okay, next question is for Philip. As a member of our board, I'm wondering if there's any difference between a resident homeowner and an investor as far as the laws in the CARES Act, as far as foreclosures.
So the general outline that Carrie gave as to the CARES Act will apply to any federally related mortgage. So in my experience, especially in condominiums and common ownership communities, is someone might have bought into a condominium originally and they moved out later and turned it into an investment property. But I'm pretty sure the CARES Act protections would still apply to that, what is now an investor property in that circumstance. Now, if they took out an investor loan on the property, a pure investor loan, which I rarely ever see, CARES Act may not apply generally for that borrower. We're anticipating that the standard that's created by the CARES Act will apply to all mortgage borrowers, no matter what type of loan you have. But that's something that's going to have to develop over the next few months and year.
Sarah, while you have him there, Philip's got a two-parter coming.
Okay.
It's basically along the same lines you were just talking about with CARES Act and COVID. Same person has two questions. First one is, if someone hasn't paid their condo fee in a long time, why is it so difficult to make anything happen? It seems as if we pay collection attorneys a lot of money, but we keep paying, and the unit owner keeps getting to stay in their home. Then the follow-up is, does this apply to unit owners that have been behind for a long time before COVID? So I think she's asking, is there protection for the person with the COVID, and would they be able to get deferment based on that if they were way behind prior to COVID?
I think there's two separate questions as I'm understanding it. So the second question, in a mortgage context, if someone was in foreclosure or behind on their mortgage before the CARES Act was enacted, the CARES Act protections, I believe, apply to them. But they should call the Civil Justice Foreclosure Hotline, and a free lawyer can go through their particular situation. The benefit for our community, if that person does that, is they may have an opportunity, based on my experience the last time around, a program may be developed, a new modification may be offered in just a matter of weeks or months, that would apply to them that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to get 4 months ago or 3 months ago. So yeah, I think the protections apply even if they were in default before the CARES Act was enacted. But there hasn't been any litigation because the courts are shut down. But that is what some of the general and Carrie's outline shared, and what my understanding of what people are advising. The first question is sort of more broad. So I think from a common ownership community, a member or unit owner owes a lot of money that hasn't been paid in a long time. And what can you do about that? The law permits the association certain remedies. They have to be timely pursued. If those remedies aren't timely pursued, they're lost. And sometimes they involve legal. Sometimes they involve sort of negotiation. So it may depend on a particular sort of situation. If legal counsel is not able to go forward because there's a bar to going forward on the collection action, then the bar needs to be resolved, whatever that issue is that's stopping. And then, you know, if a borrower is able to refinance, I've had some borrowers, I'm going to answer this question with a real world example that happened the last time around. I had a client in a common ownership community who was in foreclosure. She had no money. She did a bankruptcy, and she thought the right thing to do was to leave the house in the community. She assumed, incorrectly, she didn't know it at the time, that the foreclosure would proceed at the end of her bankruptcy, and then a new owner would take over the property. But what happened last time was the banks got caught doing robo-signing and other impermissible foreclosure practices, and her foreclosure case was dismissed. And she came to me 3 years later because the HOA had not been paid. There was a long-term default. And she asked me, how could this be? They were going to foreclose on me. And I said, well, they decided not to. And unfortunately for her, legally, she was responsible for those fees, even though she hadn't been living in the property for 3 years. So, you know, we had to get a tenant in that property. So I just say it may depend on.
It gets ugly. All right, I'm probably going to regret doing this. Mary, are we good?
She's muted.
No, I unmuted her a second ago.
Okay, she's still muted.
Okay.
Are we good?
We're good.
Okay, thank you. Okay, making sure.
Okay.
Sarah, you're up.
All
You
right.
want me to do the top one?
I'm sorry.
You want me to do the top one?
I'm not sure which one that.
I would like more information in regards to the bill that Mr. Fine just mentioned.
Yes.
Okay. The bill is in the process right now of being written by legislation at the council. I was in Zoom meetings most of the afternoon. We're going to pick it up again tomorrow. We're going to finish writing it up over the weekend, and we'll have it ready sometime first of the week. The preliminary discussion will be with the council on the 7th. Then it'll go to the council on the 14th. Then it will go out for public discussion and public input. So you won't miss being able to give input on it. Most of the money is going to be coming from the CARES funding act, or the CARES Act funding for it. We will have it up on the site as soon as it's ready. I don't want to commit to the time frame, but you know, it's going to be very, very, very soon because we have a drop dead date to get this thing done. So that's the best I can tell you right now because we're still trying to form it all together. I just wanted to give everybody the heads up that we are trying to do something out here. So I hope that answers. If not, feel free to email me and we can talk more, I'll send you my phone number here and we can talk live. And
Yeah,
I'll send it to him now. Okay.
so I do want to circle back to some of the questions that are specific to homeowners that are in the situation of facing a foreclosure. Some of the questions that are coming in are really specific to the perhaps homeowner association side of things, and perhaps, you know, it seems like there's a lot of energy around that, and perhaps it deserves a presentation of its own. But I do want to just circle back to some of the questions related to the CARES Act to make sure that we're really hitting home on that. Let me just say that this is a lot of information, and you don't have to absorb all of this information in this presentation or in this hour and a half. There are ongoing loops of information available to you. And so
we'll post all of these questions too, and the answers and the links.
Great. So I just want to remind you, if you're feeling stressed, take a deep breath. There are resources that are free that will kind of walk you through if you're facing one of these situations. I want to go back to a question that was raised regarding something Carrie said. And that is something that stuck out to me. I called my mortgage lender and they told me over the phone that I was qualified for a CARES Act forbearance plan. Is that it? I don't have to do anything else? Or should I be getting things in writing? What's the best approach there? She might be muted. We can't.
Who's muted? Oh, Carrie, I'm sorry. I just sent it to you. There you go.
Now, there we go.
How come you keep muting yourself?
None of us.
There's a little ruckus going on in my house.
Oh, that's right. You have the poltergeist going.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good night. So the question was, yes, from my understanding, what happens is if you call your mortgage company, if you're federally backed mortgage, and you call your mortgage company and say, I'm being adversely affected, my income is adversely affected, I cannot make my mortgage payment, that should be enough, and they should place your mortgage in forbearance. I do not know, and Philip Robinson may know, I don't know about paperwork that gets received or sent that I am not sure about. Philip, do you know?
So based on my experience last time in 2008, people would call up and they would be qualified for a modification over the phone orally, and then the mortgage companies turned around and reneged and they didn't honor those agreements. So what I've been advising my clients to do is they can call, but they should follow up with correspondence to their mortgage company confirming what was said on the phone, so there's a paper trail. It's very difficult to unwind the oral statements later, even though they say they record the calls. Getting the recordings takes litigation. And so I advise my clients to send a letter. And on the back of almost every mortgage statement are addresses where specific correspondence can be sent. And you want to send this particular correspondence to what is called the request for information, or QWR address. Just say, I talked to you on this day, you confirm that I could get a CARES Act forbearance. If that's not true, let me know. And then you have a paper trail started.
Okay.
Save a copy of the letter for your own records too.
So it seems like what we're discussing is kind of a difference between the ideal world and the real world. So even though you ideally should be able to call and get the forbearance, that Philip's recommendation, your recommendation is that you always get some kind of documentation that that's the case.
When speaking with your mortgage company too, I would ask them, are you going to send me anything in writing? And definitely do what Philip says, follow up yourself with writing, but also be very clear with them. Ask them what's going to happen next, as far as, are they going to send you anything or what?
Okay. Thank you. Let me go to this question. Where did it run away to? So this was mentioned by Philip, and I think Alexa may also be able to speak to this. And it's a question that comes up pretty frequently regarding a reverse mortgage and whether that is a good idea, a bad idea, or does it depend? So this question is, I'm nearing retirement and was thinking of taking out a reverse mortgage. Is that a good idea? And I'll leave that to Philip and Alexa.
You go first, Alexa.
My answer is it depends. For some people, it may make sense to do a reverse mortgage, but I generally recommend treading very cautiously with that.
Are there anything that you would recommend? Like, why do you say we should tread cautiously? What things are you concerned about?
Well, a lot of people run into trouble with reverse mortgages. There are some kind of predatory scammers who will encourage reverse mortgages. Luckily, there are some laws that have everything's shifted.
Sorry. So they can see you.
Oh, thanks. So, especially for a homeowner who's looking to pass on their property to their, next of kin or heirs, they may not want to take out a reverse mortgage. I've also seen a lot of issues with people who are unable to pay property taxes and run into issues with their reverse mortgages. But for some people, it makes a lot of sense, especially to help with paying for improvements to their home and things like that.
Thank you.
Philip?
So I would just add that the cost of a reverse mortgage are pretty substantial compared to a regular mortgage. So the real key, if someone's looking at it, is how long do they intend to stay in their property? And speaking as the son of a former resident of Riderwood and Leisure World, is that property something they can get to easily as they may become more physically challenged? So if the property's that way and their health is in good shape, it may make sense. It's a good tool in the toolbox when someone is behind on let's say hypothetically their condo fees. They have a very low or no mortgage balance. And if their health is good, it could be a good tool in the toolbox. But I would say they should call the civil justice hotline, go over their specific details, and then get engaged with a bona fide, reverse mortgage broker who's recommended by reputable people, and talk about that. Alternatively, it may be just simpler for the circumstances to take out a smaller line of credit, depending on the financial situation, and it's much cheaper to do that. If you're not going to be in the house more than 5 years or more, then that might be a better route anyway. Save money and leave, as Alexa was saying, a larger legacy for your heirs if that's what your intent is.
Sarah, you're muted.
There you go.
Okay.
Probably the one up top. There's boilerplate verbiage. Is there boilerplate verbiage on how to notify homeowners in an HOA of the significance of keeping current with their mortgages and assessments, and recommending on how the homeowner can take a proactive approach to avoid making their current circumstances worse?
I'm going to answer that one. Carrie McCulley Metz can draft a little article that every HOA community can publish in their communications with all of this information. Make it really simple for you.
that, and if you get it to me, I'll blast it out to the HOAs and the condos.
And like anything else, people need to get the information multiple times and in multiple methods. So at the meetings, postcards, blast emails, whatever, there's help there. That's the main message to get people. Last time around, when we did these massive trainings for lawyers and then for homeowners, we could have them all come to one location. So Chris Van Hollen, when he was a member of the House, would host a reception. We'd have 1,000 or 2,000 homeowners show up with pro bono lawyers, housing counselors. We can't do that right now. So with the community that's targeted on this call, you know, we really need to get the message out on the local level. So I volunteer Carrie to draft that message.
I second it. All those in favor? Passed.
Thanks. Philip is right though. The slogan we saw everywhere the last time was mortgage late, don't wait. That holds true. The sooner you reach out for help, and I can draft something and get it out to everyone and to you, Mark, to blast out, is the sooner you reach out for help. There is help that's available. The sooner you start this process, the more options you may have with trying to get assistance, trying to meet, just deal with the whole situation. If you stick your head in the sand, and wait till the last minute, you're not going to have nearly as many options or solutions that may be available to you. Cannot wait.
And Sarah, if you can bring it to the Friday group, when we do that, you're going to be talking to the council president. I'm unmuting you again.
I'm not muting me. I don't know.
I don't know what's doing it. I'm not muting you either. Phil, keep your hands up.
I haven't done it.
Okay.
But again, somebody asked it. I want to knock this one out fast. Somebody asked a question, will this be posted? Yes, this entire thing will be posted on the website for the county. All the Q&A will be there, and the PowerPoint will be there as well. And everything we're talking about, we're going to have up there, you'll have access to. It'll be on the main banner page of the Department of Housing. Okay, I'm sorry. Your turn, ma'am.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay.
What happened to the question?
What question?
Somebody just knocked one out.
Not me. I have. Okay. There's a lot of, some of these are, I think, questions from the
Yeah, the three, I don't know, are you hitting open right now?
No.
Well, if you hit the one that says open, those are the ones we haven't done.
Yes, they are. I mean, this one is tricky. It would be good if Montgomery County could help those in homeowner associations to possibly move to a less expensive home without litigation. Any chance of some kind of program to help the unit owners in that kind of case?
It's possible right now. That's not in the target area. We're trying to, we've appropriated just at the county level, something about $22 million for COVID. And we're trying to keep everybody going at the moment. That is something we are working on right now. Sarah and Alexa can answer that one, distressed community, where we're trying to help people with affordable homes. It's still going on. We're still working on it, but you can't use it in CARES Act. That's specific money for a specific purpose. This is money we're going to have to go out and get bonds for to do, to answer his question shortly. But we are going to try and do something.
Yeah, just, I mean, off the top of my head, I think you'd probably want to be really careful about Alexa raised fair housing issues earlier.
Yeah.
So that just seems a little thorny to me.
And it's the same thing with the question right below it. We can't use the CARES Act except for certain things. I mean, Philip, you can answer me. There is a criteria you've got to follow to get that money. And some of the things that's up here, it's not going to qualify. So we've got to be very, very careful. That's funding. And, it's strict guidelines. So we'll do what we can do to help, but, we can't help 100%. We can do what we can do.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Oh, I thought he was going to say something.
Um,
No
there's other-
questions.
Yeah, there's another question or statement about what to consider in the bill regarding judges excusing late fees, collection costs, etc. I mean, I think just to loop back around, to me, that would involve a real consideration of your collection costs. I'll let Alexa and Philip jump in, but if you are pushing very aggressive collection activity, that you may want to reconsider and adopt a
That
holistic.
and you want to look at the governing documents, because most of them say you can't waive an assessment. You can waive a late fee, but I could be wrong, but most say you can't waive an assessment.
Well, this one's specific to late fees and collection costs, etc.
Yeah, that is something the board can do. Sorry.
It's okay.
Well, I don't represent homeowners associations. I can just say I think that they're or condominium associations. I think that the flexibility that Mark's talking about is that they have. What I wanted to suggest to folks who are on those boards is that they consider how much money they've spent on collection that may be unreimbursed, as this question is sort of touching on. And
Yes.
was there another way, cheaper way, to potentially collect that past due assessment that the association needs and wants to operate? And I'm just thinking out loud, there's probably a different approach than aggressive collection activities that may not result in the desired, keep someone in their home, keep them making the payments going forward, making whatever they can going backwards. And maybe they can roll it into a refinance and pay off what's owed. But sometimes I just think the aggressive, what I've seen with aggressive collection activity, not even done by lawyers, done by non-lawyers, it's not appropriate. That creates problems.
Alexa?
I don't have anything else to add to that.
I know that's the big thing, is everybody wants to jump on the bandwagon and send this thing to collections and go to the attorney and immediately get that 1/3 zapped onto it. But nobody bothers to find out, has somebody even picked up the phone to call the homeowner to try and make a plan? So we need to get back out there and talk to folks and say, hey, what can we do? And I'd rather get, $10 a month than not get anything, because we're going to end up charging this thing off because they can't pay it and they're going to end up going bankrupt. Now you've got nothing.
Most times the homeowner associations are last on the list. The creditors have already got in line before them.
Well, we're right about pushing up on 8 o'clock. So
I had one more thing I just would say, we can't, I want to be realistic here, and especially because I'm also a Montgomery County resident. A lot of Montgomery County residents are fortunate to have equity in their properties. And so it's not the optimal solution, but in some cases, if someone can't pay their mortgage and they can't pay the condominium or homeowners association assessments, they may need to consider selling, because if the foreclosure goes forward, they're likely to lose a lot of that equity. It'll get sucked up in the cost. And so, no one asked that question today, but I'll just say, that's another thing that should be considered. And, having a bird in hand, the equity out of the property can help pay for where you land, where you may need to move to.
Absolutely.
And so it's a little counterintuitive to the theme that you've heard in a lot of my other answers, but I think it's malpractice for me not to tell a client who has a lot of equity that they should consider that option, especially now because it's a seller's market. But it probably won't be in 6 months.
And to answer one of the questions that just came in a second ago, we have another follow-up on COVID coming. We're also going to be doing one. We've had a request to do one with the county police department on security in your home, and one on some basics for the associations. If you have something you want us to do a town hall on, please let us know. We'll be more than happy to help. If your association has a problem doing a meeting and they don't have the resource to do it, reach out to us. CCOC at montgomerycountymd.gov. We can Skype, we can Zoom, we can WebEx, we can host a webinar with Zoom up to 1,000 people. We will assist you doing your meeting. So please, there's no reason why you can't connect with your membership to tell them what's going on and what the resources are. And JD, I'm giving you a phone number. Please look at your chat. Give me a call tomorrow. I'd like to talk to you about that last question you sent me. Sorry, Sarah. Wrap it up, ma'am.
That's okay. I just want to remind everybody about civil justice and the services that we provide. Civil Justice is a network of solo and small firm attorneys around the state of Maryland, including Montgomery County, where Philip lives and works. And they are dedicated to enhancing access to justice for low and moderate income Marylanders. We also have an in-house practice that Carrie helps manage, and Alexa is our senior staff attorney, and we provide representation to homeowners, many of whom are experiencing financial distress. So we encourage you to keep our foreclosure brief legal advice hotline in mind. Call our intake number, which will be sent out with this presentation. And as Carrie said, it's, what was the line?
And you'll also, Philip will be smiling on this one. As soon as we're in the process of bringing a couple items up onto the website, in addition to that will be the web link to your location. Civil Justice.
Oh, I thought you meant Philip's location.
No, you three.
He's going to have people knocking down his door. So, well,
So
thank
that
you.
will help you for that.
Yeah. Thank you very much for hosting us.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, everybody.
And thank you everybody for attending, and thank you to the panel. I will have this up. The stuff should be ready to go out by the weekend at the latest. And I will pass it to you folks, the panel first, so you can take a look, and then we'll go from there. With that, I think we've answered everybody. If not, we'll send something to you in writing. We've got everybody's email. So if we didn't make it, we will. And again, thank you, and we all have a good night and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, take care.